Well, it's not only people in the U.S., of course, who are anxiously waiting to find out who is going to be the next president. Europe is watching very closely. Let's bring in now Kristine Berzina from the German Marshall Fund in Brussels. She's a senior fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy there. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. As we've been discussing here, Trump has called the integrity of the electoral process into question. What is the state of democracy in the U.S. right now?
Thank you for having me. I mean, when you look at the state of democracy in the US right now, you see two different things. You see, on the one hand, a very smoothly, steadily progressing democratic process and election process. I think that's very important to understand. The election results are coming in slowly because of the way that Americans voted this year. We saw a tremendous number of absentee ballots, of mail-in ballots, early voting. All of that has created a different landscape than we have ever seen before in the United States. And based on laws that we have in place across the US, many of those votes could not be counted until Election Day themselves, which is why we are on Friday and we still do not have full ballot tallying in states like Pennsylvania or Nevada, where we're still looking for these results, and Georgia as well. So when you look at the democratic process, the process of the elections, the technical side, it's progressing exactly as it should. Slowly, but that's what people anticipated in advance of the election and what we're seeing today. We also anticipated that many of the in-person voters on Election Day would be more from the Republican side. And we have seen that Democrats have sent in more mail-in ballots than Republicans have in many places. Because of this, we've seen this change. On the other hand, we see the president's rhetoric. And so we have to balance the president's rhetoric against what we're seeing in terms of voting process. And the rhetoric is alarming. Although I think the U.S. and you look at the media in particular are doing a good job of handling that.
And let's talk a little bit more about that, because I'd like to ask you, I mean, you're sitting here in Europe, right? Are leaders here, are people encouraged that the process in the United States is working? I mean, is that really a boon for people who are looking in on this? Or is the level of concern that one has, based on the message that we are hearing from the presidency, sort of trumping all of that?
I think the European leaders have gone into this with a great deal of understanding that this is going to be a longer process than usual. So I think from the leadership side, generally, we're seeing also a wait and see approach, resilience, patience. The Slovenian prime minister came out with a very early congratulations to President Trump, but that came as different from others. I mean, you have seen many member state media, Le Monde, among others, talking about the chaos in the United States. I mean, that is perhaps alarming in some ways and maybe not a perfect representation of what is going on. But again, generally, there is a sense of wait and see and an explanation of that by European media to European audiences. Although there are certain places, such as Poland, which is taking President Trump's words, his allegations of fraud, much more literally. We have seen in other countries and other leaders also take that with a skepticism and an understanding of the invalidity of President Trump's words. But in places where you have very allied governments, such as Poland, perhaps there's less of that nuance being presented to the people.
Very fascinating to see how Europe is looking in on all of this. Kristine Berzina from the German Marshall Fund in Brussels, thank you so much for joining us to share that expertise.
Thank you so much.